McGeeTV.
Just released yesterday for digital download on the PlayStation Store, Haunted Castle is an arcade game published by Konami in 1988. This PlayStation 4 exclusive release is part of the Arcade Archives collection published by Hamster Corporation. I have played other arcade games in this series on my Nintendo Switch, such as Waku Waku 7. Hamster Corporation ports a large number of arcade games across many different platforms, with available titles varying by console. Like the other games in the Arcade Archive series, Haunted Castle includes the original Japanese, North American, and European versions of the game. A high score mode gives you the opportunity to compete against players all over the world for the highest score you can achieve in a single life. Caravan mode gives you 5 minutes to accumulate the most points you can for the highest score. Despite featuring Simon Belmont, Dracula, and many enemies of the Castlevania franchise, Haunted Castle lacks the Castlevania name for North America and Europe. Developed between Castlevania II Simon's Quest and Castlevania III Dracula's Curse, Haunted Castle suffered from a lack of resources due to a short staff. Near the game's deadline, development problems forced Konami to pool resources from another arcade game to assist in fixing art assets and other issues with Haunted Castle. The rushed, bare-bones development resulted in a game that failed to produce profits in arcades. Haunted Castle faded into obscurity for all but the most dedicated of Castlevania fans. Released in Japanese arcades as Akamajo Dracula, which translates to Dracula's Castle, the game shared the title given to all Castlevania games released in Japan. In 2002, Hamster Corporation first ported the game to PlayStation 2 as a Japan exclusive. As mentioned earlier, the PlayStation 4 digital download includes all international versions of Haunted Castle. The North American and European versions of the game differ from the Japanese game by having English text, while the North American version specifically features higher difficulty, with enemies taking more damage from Simon than in other releases. This port thankfully allows you to decrease or to increase the difficulty level of the game in an options menu, as well as create an interrupt save state. As a die-hard Castlevania fan who completed most of the games in the series, including the Nintendo 64 games, I managed to beat the game in about 3 or 4 hours in 2 separate sessions with no save states on normal difficulty of the North American release. This is the first Western release of Haunted Castle outside of the arcade. As for most arcade games, Haunted Castle features only a basic story. Newlyweds Simon and Serena Belmont exit a church as lightning strikes across atop the building, causing the crucifix to explode. Dracula swoops down from the skies to kidnap Serena and set Simon out on a quest to save her. As Simon, you must battle familiar enemies across 6 linear stages before facing Dracula and rescuing your bride. The graphics are far more impressive than those found on the Nintendo Entertainment System and MSX computer games that preceded Haunted Castle. The character sprites are much larger and detailed. Backgrounds and foregrounds feature weather and environmental effects like rain and fog. Enemy characters like zombies feature gory details such as blood and missing flesh. I enjoyed small touches such as the sinister possessed wall that throws bricks at Simon, the acid trip multicolor river of death, the painting that cries bloody tears, and the random interdimensional door that forced Simon to fight harpies before returning to reality. These events do a lot to make the game more interesting and worthy of completing start to finish. This game predates the 16-bit console era, and I found that while the graphics are not exceptional for arcade games of the time, they were the best graphics for a Castlevania game prior to the Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis. The controls and difficulty represent the 2 worst aspects of the game. Simon's movements are stiff and slow, making it difficult to react to enemy attacks and environmental hazards. The rough development of the game shows in how Simon's unusually large sprite makes him a large, slow-moving target for bats and projectiles. The game was designed to take quarters, but this game is far more punishing than most old-school arcade games. When Simon dies, he either restarts the stage or at a mid-level checkpoint. While this PlayStation 4 port allows you to spam the token button, triangle button, to give yourself as many lives as you want, this does not matter as environmental hazards and enemies take anywhere from a quarter to half of your life in a single hit. Unlike all other Castlevania games, there are no health items or candles containing items in Haunted Castle. As a result, This game is popular for hardcore players seeking to make it through in a no-hit playthrough. Simon keeps the hearts acquired in previous stages, which makes the game progressively easier on a single playthrough. Yet with a slew of environmental hazards all trying to kill Simon, this is most definitely a challenge. Fortunately, the bosses of each stage are simplistic and easy to defeat, with the final boss being one of the easiest and therefore in some manner the most disappointing boss in the game. Simon begins the game with the Vampire Killer Whip. He acquires hearts by killing enemies and collecting them on the ground, when they land on screen and not in a glowing river of death. The hearts can be used for attacking enemies with sub-weapons as in previous games. Simon can throw a bomb that works similar to holy water in the earlier games. He later gets a blade projectile that looks like a boomerang but does not return to him. As in other Castlevania games, he can also find a stopwatch to freeze time and a holy cross that inflicts the most damage. Also, like the main series of games, Simon can find a Morning Star to upgrade the range and power of his whip. Bizarrely, the most powerful main weapon of the game is a sword. This marks the only Castlevania game to feature a Belmont using a sword instead of his trademark whip. I discovered a trick while playing the game. Pressing up on the control pad or left analog stick and the options button at the same time results in Simon's lives being converted into additional hit points on his life meter. This mimics an exploit of the original arcade machine where players could add $1 worth of tokens for 4 times the amount of life normally given to Simon. In the arcade, players had to either complete the game with that 1 life, or insert another $1 when prompted after dying, or face restarting the entire game. This port fortunately does not require such action from the player. Simply press the triangle button at least 4 times to add 4 tokens. Press up in the options button at the same time in-game to trigger additional health. Repeat until you've increased your life to the maximum. A number appears by your life bar to indicate your additional hit points. One fantastic feature of this game is the music. The third stage features the classic Vampire Killer theme from the first stage of the original Castlevania game, with all of the sound improvements offered by the hardware of an arcade machine. Other tracks in the game later became remixed and used in other Castlevania titles. The soundtrack lives up to the Castlevania legacy, with some very enjoyable music. The sound effects are serviceable, with the expected whip sounds, and I love how you hear a werewolf howl whenever you press the token button. Serena's scream and Dracula's laugh serve as the only voice clips in the game. Overall, I very much enjoyed playing Haunted Castle. As a die-hard Castlevania fan, I have always wanted to play the game. The arcade machines are very rare, and the cost of importing a rare copy of the PlayStation 2 Japanese exclusive proved to be prohibitively expensive. The $7.99 price tag represents a fair value for this game, as it gives players the opportunity to play this very bizarre and unique game in the Castlevania series. I recommend this game to Castlevania fans who are willing to get past the learning curve associated with memorizing level layouts and enemy placement. I found the game to be much more enjoyable after the second stage and with the additional health points. Thanks for tuning in. Please let me know if you agree or disagree with my review by commenting below or visiting us at McGeeTV.com. or on social media at McGee_TV on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Also, check out Evan and myself on Twitch at McGee_TV and XXScissorpXX Gaming. Finally, please like and subscribe for future content, and as always, thanks for tuning in.